Alright. Hi, everyone. It's me, Sarah Urnus, Sailor Skyworld. Amara here. And today we're going to talk about the hate. We're going to talk about, the hate that some Sailor Moon followers have for Deep Glee Sailor Moon. Now, I don't know if hate's the right word for it, And keep in mind, Deek's Glee Sailor Moon, formerly Toei, formerly Disney, formerly Deke, formerly Cookie Jar, Cookie Can, formerly DMX, now Wild Brian, is 30 years old. So 30 years ago, the first English take on Sailor Moon happened. Now, a lot of the Sailor Moon followers and the Sailor Moon followership have hate the Deep Glee's take on Sailor Moon, 9 between 95 YL till 9 between 98 YL, due to the following things: cutting out some sagas of following one. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you why some of them were cut. Need be happen to do with fighting, I would think, or someone doing, or saying something. But whatever the grounds is, a lot of it was cut out due to something that Deep Glee and the Walt Disney business, because Deep Glee was owned by the Walt Disney business between the years of between 95 to 20 YL. So there may have been some things and it had to do with either what was being said or what was being done. Now, another thing that they get irked and angered over is the shifting of street names or instead names or business names. I don't know why they do, but they do. And they made a big deal about, Crossroads or Round Street being the name of the gore or borough or town or township or stead where Serena and all her friends and sometimes, and live. At least that was a name given to the Deep world where Serena went, where she lived. And the learn that she went to was called Crossroads Junior High or Cross Streets Younger High. Now, a lot of folks being irked at the town that the gore or borough or township or town or stead's name was shifted to that. I don't know. They make a big deal about names being shifted. Like, instead of Usagi, it's Serena. Instead of Aimi, it's Amy. Rei is the same. Makofo is Lita. Minako is Mina. Chibiluza is Rini. And Monaru is Darien. Now keep in mind, Darien was not the name that Deke chose. That was chosen by the folks at Renaissance Atlantic Entertainment or New Birth Great Sea Glee. Now, why they made a big deal about either Latinus, Frenchis, Hellenish, Farcius, or Blacklandish, or even Spanish or Hebrewish borrowed names being in the stead of Hellenish instead of, Dawnish borrowed names is beyond me. But they make a big deal about names being shifted all the time. I don't know. Another thing that they bitch about was the skimming, about how some of the fighting or some of the wrestling was being skimmed or cut out from any fighting that was going on in the show. They bitch about how the weapons don't seem to be about the weapons not cutting anyone or no one bleeding, or things like that, or weapons being cut out if they were cutting, or the blood being cut out, or things like that. I don't know why they made a big deal about it, but they did. And then we come to another tuskler in the room, is that they made a thing about Zoisite and Millikite, who were on straight lovers and only this take of Sailor Moon. Now, if you read the books or you watch Sailor Moon Hearst, you know that they are straight. But only in this take of Sailor Moon were not. But in Deke's world, they got irked or angered that Zoisite became a woman. And I had talked about this many times. I think Deke Glee had to do it because if they didn't, they were worried about ownership and leadership of the Sundre Folkworks, either UPN, WB, USA, or he's in cartoon or drawn, whatever, or irked about bears, teachers, and worship elders making such a big deal about it that the show would get dropped. So they had to do what they had to do at the time. Nowadays, now the way that nowadays, you don't have to worry about that anymore. But back then, there were a lot of folks. Nowadays, more folks are open-minded. More folks are trusting, and more folks are, understanding what it means to be unstraight, and more open-mindedness to unstraightness, and more trusting in unstraightness. But back then, that wasn't really where it was then. So they make a big deal about Zoisite being a woman. And I'm sorry, in Deke Glee's world, Zoisite's a woman. Now, you might wonder to yourself if there was anything else that they bitched about. Because there was one following in Sailor Moon R that got cut. And it didn't get cut due to it not being right. It got cut because someone at Deke lost the film. And since they lost it, Toei wasn't going to give Disney or Deke another one, but that had to make a new deal with the Sailor Moon work, and they didn't want to get a new deal with it just for one lost film, so that's why. And another thing that seems to irk them or anger them or run them up the wall is that how, Day of Destiny or Day of Calling, which was one saga, which was two sagas, and they and every other telling of Sailor Moon, well, mostly every other telling, and how Deke made, instead of being two sagas, Deke shifted it to being one saga, and it pissed them off. That why? I don't know. Then getting irked or angered over them not being slain, but being taken by the Dark Kingdom, which why they made a big deal out of it is beyond me. And we're talking about some show that was about, or some take, I'm sorry for those burps, some take on a show which is 30 years old, and by now you would think the folks would have, this would not be a thing. But yeah, before I end this film, sadly, it did become a thing, and there are a lot of irked and angered folks in the Sailor Moon followership over it. A lot of folks that got irked and angered when they either looked it up at the interweb at their at Learn or at the book house, or when they did get their own reckoner, and then looked it up and said, oh, so that's where Deke shifted names from, or that's what they cut out, or that's the other sagas they chose to skip over, or whatever. And then their hatred of Deke Glee Sailor Moon started from then on. And I think it's sad that Deke Glee Sailor Moon gets hate from the Sailor Moon followership. And no need how many films I make on this, I'll never truly understand why the hatred isn't there. So if you like this film, share it, playlist it, give it a like, and I will see you later.